AI Create presents Hairy Topics.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hairy Topics, the new podcast from AI Create, where we tackle the big questions in AI and the even bigger implications they have on creativity and creative industries. I'm Justin Peyton, your host. I'm joined today by David Webster, my co-host, and also the co-founder of AI Create. David, do you want to introduce yourself to the people and tell them a little bit about AI Create?
Thank you, Justin, and great to be here on this first episode of AI Create. I'm David, and as Justin said, I'm the co-founder of AI Create. We started AI Create in 2023, really as a way to bridge the gap that we saw existing between creative industries and AI technology and AI practitioners. So great to be here on our first podcast.
And nowhere better to start than the latest model from OpenAI and the Ghibli-fication of, well, everyone is what it seems like. It's everyone is what I'd say, which I understand because it is such a beautiful and iconic style of art. And yet it makes me sad because it was so unique. And it is now, a Snapchat filter.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I've been thinking quite a lot about this, and I think sort of it's very hard to, on one hand, apply sort of the rational brain, and on the other hand, applying the let's say the more creative, artistic brain. Respectful of the amazing creativity, incredible people bring to the world every day. And it's an interesting one. I think Studio Ghibli is a perfect example for a very simple reason that while Miyazaki created a unique, beautiful, aesthetic, if you want, one would argue that the moment you put a new aesthetic into the world, it's in the public domain. And the moment something is in public domain, it will start inspiring others. It will start driving copycats. So is this something new? I would argue no, like with many things that AI has been doing. What AI has been doing and what GPT-4o images has been doing specifically is, unfortunately, to some extent, create the mass adoption of an existing aesthetic, and therefore we all notice it. I mean, have there been no other Studio Ghibli copycats out there? Of course there have been. Dozens and dozens. It's just that most people don't know about them because they're not as mass as what AI is making available today.
To me, it's like you look at art, and if you take art classes, you learn to go through style after style. And copying the masters was historically the way you learned. A master painter would take on apprentices, and in many circumstances, the apprentice would actually paint part of a tableau or maybe the foundation of the tableau, but copying a master's style was very much part of the learning process. And in that sense, I look at it and I go, yeah, of course, this is just the same at a different scale, but the principles are the same. We're going to learn from something, we're going to emulate something, and that's that. I think there's a big difference, though. And the big difference here is copyright law. And the interesting thing about it is the difference in copyright law and how it's applied between Japan and the rest of the world. And if you ask for something to Mickey Mouse-ify your family or to Peppa Pigify your family, obviously I'm not privy to what training data has been used, but it knows who Peppa Pig is and it knows who Mickey Mouse is. So clearly some of that is in the training data. And so it could do that, but it won't do that. And the difference here is that Japan said, well, you can't sue anybody over copyright infringement if the creative data, if that data was used for training and not for entertainment. And as a result, there's no copyright protection in this instance. And so you can be much more direct and say, give me a Ghiblification of something. And all of a sudden it changes it, which you could do. I mean, and we've all played with enough image generators to go, okay, you know what, I can put an image of Mickey Mouse in to a prompt engine and ask it to describe that, in the way that I could reprompt it and get basically Mickey Mouse. And then you just go in with the prompt alone. Yeah, sure, if you want to do that. This is different. This is a direct, you can move something forward without the copyright. And I wonder if it's going to be looked at differently by the creative community.
Yeah, possibly. Look, and I think the part of the reason why it's been having such big sort of impact or creating such big noise is because it's taking something so iconic and so beloved and so loved, and a pillar, if you want, of the creative and filmmaking community who has a very clear stance against the technology. So, look, I think a lot of it is clickbait, to be honest with you, and it's being amplified by all these factors. So I do agree with you, there is a legal backing, which is very different. I personally don't believe, like anything with innovation, that rightly or wrongly, that any kind of law or regulation will hold back the natural application of technology. It never has, it never will, right? So, I think we can argue intellectually on the different types of law and copyright laws. And I was reading exactly about sort of Japan's copyright law, which is interesting. It's unique, like many things, but that's okay. But for me, it opens up sort of a bigger question, or it brings a slightly bigger question here, which is, in its broad term, does it matter, right? Actually, does the Ghiblification, I hate that name, but let's call it that, of creativity, what material impact will it actually have? Will it actually in any way diminish the value of the work that Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli have done to date or will be doing in the future?
No.
Absolutely not. Will it in any way be taking away a source of income from the pockets of Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki? No.
It may actually do the opposite and introduce people who have never been introduced to the animation, to the style.
Exactly. So for me, it's important when looking at some of these discussions is on a very, again, pragmatic perspective, what is the material impact that this work is doing? I would argue that the material impact is greater when it's often applied to smaller, more unique, if you want, lesser known artists potentially. I think that the impact is bigger from a technological point of view on entire sort of swaths of creatives, whether it is website designers, with the sort of the Lovables of this world, or whether it is, retouchers, or whether it is CGI artists. I think that's where the conversation should be focused. And how do we help upskill, retrain, relook at those sort of type of crafts rather than get into a big tizzy because a piece of technology is allowing you to replicate a visual aesthetic that, let's be honest, has been replicated and copied dozens or hundreds of times before and will have no material impact on the artists or the type of creativity. So, I don't know. I'm a little bit cynical sometimes when I see these headlines.
I understand. I think the cynicism is healthy. I think that in its own way, I think that the debate that it creates and the polarization is the healthiest thing that we could get.
I agree.
The reality here is this, right? We are at the beginning of an industry, and yes, it's a few years in, and we still don't have clear legislation around copyright, clear legislation around what AI identity is going to be. There's many things that are going to cascade and going to become issues. And for me, if there's no controversy, if there's no issues, it's very easy to continue to not discuss what the future might hold and what those impacts might be. And so for me, I don't think this is neutral at all. I think this is actually probably a very good debate to have. And do I stand on one opinion or another? I can make an argument both ways. I absolutely think people's work should be able to be copyrighted. I absolutely think people should be able to opt out of having their work in training data. But I think that having work in training data and recognizing it and understanding where the laws are and seeing, oh, we can't do that because it violates it. I think the debate that those kinds of things start to create is the healthiest debate for this industry.
I fully agree. Look, and that's very much why we're doing this. Why we're doing this, why we're having these conversations, why we started AI Create in the first place is not about providing answers. I don't think there is a right or wrong answer. It's about getting more people to join the debate. And I think, as you said, the more people join the debate, I think the healthier it is for the industry. There is one thing this raises, and I think goes back to your point around debate is ultimately, discussion is ultimately healthy. And I've been thinking about this sort of in two quite polarizing way, and I love your point of view on this. On one hand, this sentence in the back of my mind is, is this the death of craft? Is this the death of aesthetic value? And lots of people have spoken about this. Actually, the first to be affected by any technological evolution are the craftsmen and craftswomen. Or let's look at it in a different way in the context of film specifically, for example. Is it the resurgence of meaning in narrative? Right? And I think it's an interesting way to look at it because I think sometimes, and I think I won't make any specific examples, but a lot of form over function, I would say, in the creative industry in film. Things that look beautiful but are devoid of any kind of meaning, of any kind of depth to it. On the other hand, there are beautiful pieces of work that are nothing to call home about when it comes to their look, but are beautiful stories, really well told. So arguably, when I go back, and just to connect this back to what's happening at the moment with the sort of the Studio Ghibli aesthetic, to what extent, and I know the Studio Ghibli aesthetic is a key part of its overall sort of creative construct. But I would argue that it's so much more than just the aesthetic. The stories, it's the concepts themselves, it's the characters, it's the way the storytelling is constructed. When I look at that, I go, wow, that's what I believe as someone who is, has talked a lot about AI, who believes that AI is here to stay as a key part of the creative industries. I don't think any piece of technology now or in the near or future at all will ever be able to create this what a Studio Ghibli movie actually is. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think that we, as an industry, when we think about the creative industry as opposed to just creative people, as an industry, there tends to be a lot of value put into what is the hardest thing to do in the supply chain, right? So when you sit there and you think about it, how did that come about? Well, ideas were really difficult. You had people who were product people, they valued an idea, and that was that. Then all of a sudden, how do we get that idea to reach people? And the value went into media, and that was where the value was placed. As technology came in, execution became the hardest part. And all of a sudden, the ideas were cheap. Ideas were easy. Anyone can have an idea, but executing and delivering, that's the hard part. And now, as we get to the ability to execute, the ability to create a million different versions of something, the ability to distribute, the ability to connect different servers, different data structures very, very quickly, execution's becoming easy. And I think you're right. We're coming full circle to, is there actually an idea? Is there an idea and is there a story? And if we get there, I think there's real value in getting back to what's the hard part? The hard part is when execution is really easy, the hard part is the idea.
Absolutely. Look, and I think this is true to any creative industry, as you said, which has been disrupted by technology. Suddenly the bar goes up. The bar to be of what does good mean? What does good enough mean? What cuts through? What will actually move people? Suddenly increases. I don't know. That again, it's a whole other debate we can have about.
I think those are the debates that we want to have on hairy topics. So I think with that, that's a great way to leave people, and it gives you a little teaser of the types of debates that we're looking to have and the types of guests that we're going to be bringing on from across the creative industry, not marketing, not film, but really create broad ranging creatives and where creativity is applied and how technology is impacting it. And we're looking forward to the debate. of what does AI mean for creativity.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Justin, and thank you for this chat.
Thank you so much.